You are now tuned in to Trust the Scoop with your host, Philip Dukes, a.k.a. Dukes the Scoop.
Welcome to the Brian Harsin edition of Trust the Scoop, and I am your host, Philip Dukes. Catch me at Dukes the Scoop on Twitter, Dukes the Scoop on Instagram, YouTube, Dukes the Scoop, and the podcast is Trust the Scoop, of course. Today, I have a special guest, a very, very, very special guest, Brad Pitt, everybody. Hey, everybody.
Shit, I wish, man. I wish.
Jake Crane of the Jboy show, man. Mm-hmm. One of my closest compadres when it comes to this Auburn type stuff, and especially sports period. A guy that I really trust, knows his X's and O's. Probably the most popular podcast on the rise right now in the whole entire country. Like, no, and that's I'm not even putting any cap on that. It's like 100% real. So, man, it's a pleasure to have you. Thanks a lot, man. How you feeling?
Man, well, Dukes, number one, it's great to be making my debut on Trust the Scoops. It feels good. I know how great of a job you're doing, man. I've been lucky enough to know you for a while and know what you're capable of and who you're connected to and how you're able to articulate it. And I appreciate the kind words and just obviously don't have our video set built yet. We're moving towards that, but I guess can kind of show off a little bit what we have. But Dukes, I'm just excited to be here with you, man, and talk some ball on what's obviously a huge news week. And it's kind of been snowballing as we're talking, right now.
Man, it's so crazy. So, all right, Jboy, give me some X's and O's on Harsin. Like, what do you like about what he likes to do? What are his tendencies, and what's his bread and butter?
Well, his bread and butter, number one, you're going to hear everybody say this, whether it's on the SEC Network, ESPN, whatever, and Cole Kubelik, when he came on the show, was talking about it, was, a staple of what Brian Harsin does is the stretch and outside zone. He uses perimeter runs to set up interior runs. Some guys do that backwards. They try and set up the exterior or perimeter runs by pounding inside zone, by getting your gap scheme, your power, your counter game. And Harsin kind of does that opposite. But the two things I think that stand out about Brian Harsin, just from a schematical standpoint, is number one, he has an identity. He knows what he wants to do. He wants to run to open the pass. But he also understands that you have to evolve to your personnel. You have to call plays to your personnel. You have to understand that being stubborn is not effective. Being stubborn is not efficient. And that's something that and he's only 44 years old, and he's in that new wave of coaches that understands that you have to be a chameleon. But I think evolving to your personnel, because we all know the game is trending offensively like it is in the NFL. You're looking for matchups, whether it's Kyle Pitts at Florida, whether it's Devontae Smith at Alabama, or looking for the back out of the backfield or whatever. I think that's a feather in Brian Harsin's cap. I think another thing about his offense is the versatility and how it's not we're going to do what we do and it's going to work regardless. It's we're going to have an identity, but we're going to attack you in what you do defensively, where we think you're weak. I'm going to try and out-formation you, but it's understanding that I have to be able to be versatile. You're not going to be able to move the ball on these top-flight defenses with a normal offseason, the Alabamas, the Georgias, these defenses that are coached up by Kirby Smart and Nick Saban, whatever, if you're not able to be multiple and be able to be balanced, be able to have a good play-action game. But I think something that the Auburn faithful need to really understand about this offense is something they haven't seen in a while. It uses the tight ends, Dukes. It uses the tight ends. They throw into the tight ends. It's unbelievable. It's crazy. They actually throw the ball to the tight end, and then the tight end catches the ball. And even sometimes the tight end will catch the ball in the rectangle with the paint in it for what we call a touchdown.
Get out of here.
I know, it's crazy, right? Crazy.
Man, you know what? So I watched a couple of clips, and I saw every touchdown Boise State scored last year. And I saw him attacking from all over the field. I saw the quarterback. I saw the read option with the quarterback keeps. I saw them hitting the tight end up the seam. I saw them hitting the tight end on the post, actually. I saw them getting some and you could tell that some of those plays, they were so open. They were absolutely schemed open. So basically using tendency breakers in order to get some people wide open. And that's what I love to see, especially when you're talking about a offensive guru, right? And no shot to anybody that we've had previously, but sometimes like your things could get stale when you have set your tendencies to the point. And like you said, being stubborn, like, okay, you know what? I'm going to run this play until it works. Instead of getting out of instead of being able to adjust. And I think in the SEC, that's something really important. Now, you're going to have a unique perspective as somebody who's actually coached in the Sun Belt and somebody who has those type of connections. What do you hear about Harsin as a person and his personality?
Yeah. It's a great question. I do, before I answer that, Dukes, you brought up a fantastic point, and I do want to hit this before we move on, if that's okay, is that when you become stubborn, and I think a great analogy is a pitcher that gets to the major leagues, he's brand new, these major league hitters haven't seen him before. Typically, those guys have success early because the book's not really out on you. They may have something from the minors or this, that, and the other, but until guys get in that box and they face you and they see what you have, the book's not out on you and what you go to. And what I think Auburn kind of fell into the trap of with Gus Malzahn was the book was out on him. You knew what you were going to get from the passing game. It wasn't that intellectual, so therefore you could try and go toe-to-toe with him scheme-wise in the run game. And I think what Brian Harsin will bring is an understanding that the book can't be written. I cannot set myself in stone. I cannot set myself up for the book to be out on me. And again, that doesn't mean that you're not going to have tendencies. That doesn't mean that coaches aren't going to know what your bread and butter is. That doesn't mean that they're not going to know how to attack you. But it's being able to say, I have to be able to counter what they're doing with what I'm doing. And it's not, we're going to take this game plan into the game, and the game plan's either going to work or it's not going to work. It's we're going to take this game plan into the game, and if it's not working at halftime, we're versatile enough offensively. We've worked on enough different things offensively, whether it's under center, whether it's out of the gun, whether it's 10, 11, 12 personnel, we have something to go to and we can make adjustments. So I think Auburn making adjustments past halftime and really winning a lot of second halves is something you're going to start to see, and it's kind of a staple of Brian Harsin. You asked what kind of personality is. To me, he is a general. That's what he is. But if there's one word to describe, I think Brian Harsin's personality and who he is, it's consistency. And that's a word that me and Cole Kublik kept throwing around, because you're going to get a guy that understands what the mission is, that understands what it takes to get there, not only from a schematical standpoint, and we have to run this and we have to come off the ball and this, that, and the other, but from a structure standpoint, who needs to be where, who needs to be in charge of what. I got to bring in guys that I trust. I got to bring in guys that I can give a job and not have to micromanage. But I think Brian Harsin is a dude that bets on himself. I think he's an alpha male. I think he understands what he is and knows what he can be. And those guys are the most dangerous.
Wow. I mean, you said a mouthful, and it's refreshing to hear. And with that type of general attitude, and as far as leading the troops, I think that, and from what I'm hearing, so I've talked to some high school coaches that he had contacted, and some guys who have had some contact with him in the area as far as him recruiting for Boise, and especially when he was at Arkansas State. And a lot of the guys are saying, like, hey, man, it's a no nonsense guy. He's very, very confident.
Yeah.
Some people say borderline arrogance. I don't know the guy yet. We'll see. But when I tend to hear those type words, I hear somebody who's very, very confident in what they do, and you're not going to be able to move them off of certain principles, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So a confident guy is the type of guy that says, you know what, I got my star player, and Lord forbid this would ever happen, but I got my star player that's missing class. Now, a guy who isn't as confident, or who's not going to lead as that type general, will say, well, you know what, man, we got to figure out how to get him to go to class because we need him on Saturday. That confident guy, the guy who feels like he can out-scheme you, the guy who knows it takes the Jimmys and Joes, but who's super confident in his X's and O's, is going to say, hey, man, I tell you what, either you show up to class or you pack your bags. And that's the type of attitude, that's the type of vibe that I've been getting from him. Now, being that Auburn has kind of been more of a player place the last few years, right, where the players have kind of the relationships with the players, they've been kind of catering to the players, not more so of that alpha dog mentality that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
How do you feel like he will mesh with the guys that are already there? And do you feel like a culture change is needed?
Number one, I do feel like a culture change is needed, but I think at the end of the day, real recognizes real. And if you're a player at Auburn and you're worth your salt and you're a guy that works and you're a guy that understands what it takes to be successful, you want to be pushed. And that's something I always thought, as coaching, the guys, especially in recruiting, they want structure. They want somebody that can push them. And a lot of guys come from places where, maybe they didn't have that guy that pushed them. And that's what they need. And they look up and they respect that. And it's not, listen, I got a lot of friends. I got a lot of buddies. And I'm not saying we can't have a great relationship and joke around and this, that, and the other. But you got to understand that and speaking as Brian Harsin, I'm the leader of men. I am the leader of this group. I am the leader of this program. And you have to understand that it's got to get to a point where it's not just about you wanting to do it for me. It's about you wanting to do it for yourself. And I think what he's going to teach all these guys is, listen, I am going to hold you accountable for everything. I'm not going to treat you like a kid. I'm not going to treat you like my best buddy. I'm going to treat you like somebody that I care about. I'm going to treat you like I'm going to treat my son. And if you're doing good, I'm going to tell you. If you're doing wrong, I'm going to tell you. And I'm going to love you when I need to love you, and I'm going to get on you when I need to get on you. And I think something about Brian Harsin that needs to be said is, and what I've heard, because he's so well respected in the coaching ranks, is that he's going to get on you, because a coach's job is to push a player further than he can push himself. That's what a coach's job is. And that is one of the biggest signs of love. And there's ways to do it. But I never made it personal. I don't think Brian Harsin makes it personal. It's not, listen, you're a dumbass, this, whatever, you're stupid, this, and it's like, listen, what you did was dumb. This is why. You're too smart for that. Let's fix it. Let me show you why you're going to be an All-American. And when you have a guy that's tough on you, but he's fair, let me say that again. He's tough on you, but he's fair. You respect that. That's a guy that you want to work for. That's a guy that you want to be like. And all of a sudden you look up one day and everybody is going to class and everybody is going to weights on time. And everybody understands that it's not just about letting Coach Harsin down. It's we have a culture here now that I'm not going to be the reason it screws up. That was my one thing playing. Just don't let me be the reason. I won't be the reason. Give me a chance to be the reason we win. But I promise you I won't be the reason we lose. I won't be the weak link in the chain. And I think that's the difference between Brian Harsin and a lot of other guys is he's going to make you love him, not because he's your best friend, because you want to be like him.
Now, with you saying that gives me, so I'm looking at the guys in our main competition. And let's just go ahead. Let's go there. Saban, right? Yeah. So in order for it to be successful at this job, you have to beat Alabama. Like, you won't be here long. You won't be at Auburn long if you can't beat Bama, okay? That got Gus Malzahn his 8 years by being able to beat Bama, right? I'm seeing and I'm hearing that he has that. When you see Alabama, you see Nick Saban. You don't see the biggest guy, right? You don't see, because Nick Saban's like 5'9", maybe. Like, the biggest guy. Tall. You may not even see the most cerebral guy. What you see is a guy who commands an air of accountability when he steps in the room. When you see Nick Saban, he looks so intense. And I kind of see that from Harsin. I'm kind of like, when I look at him, I'm kind of seeing, I'm like, damn, man, this guy he's about his business. And I'm looking at some of the quotes that I've seen around him, like Eli at Missouri was saying that someday you never know who you're going to get, but either way, you're going to get a positive. But one day Harsin may come in and it's Brian or well. Did you see that quote?
Yeah, I saw him. He said, some days you'll get him when he comes in. He's Harsin, and when he's Harsin, I guess he's kind of, feeling good, a little bit more laid back. And then sometimes you're going to get Brian, and Brian's kind of the get in your face. And look, to me, when I read that and what I've heard is that number one, you're always going to get a guy that's competitive. That's something that I think is huge here because this is why I say that. Let's just think about this, Dukes. And I said this on the show. Brian Harsin was at his dream job, okay, in a place he was born in Boise, Idaho.
Oh, my God.
I said on the show, the first breath of air that his body ever took was Boise, Idaho air. He played quarterback at Boise State.
Right.
Started his coaching career basically after a year at Eastern Oregon, just having to be somewhere a year.
Right.
Got back to Boise State, went to Texas for a year, left Arkansas State after the first year, winning the Sun Belt in the first place that ever gave him a head job.
Right. And
he's going to leave that place where he's from, probably where his family's from. I used to say where he went down to the old hardware store and saw Mr. Harvey as a kid,
Right.
He's going to leave that place for one reason. He thinks he can be the best. And he wants to know if he can be the best. Right. You don't take this job at Auburn and leave your hometown alma mater and I wouldn't say break ties, but surprise a lot of people back home just for the hell of it. You did it because at night you want to be able to go to sleep and know, even if it doesn't work, for some reason it doesn't work. I was swimming with the sharks because I think I'm a shark. And at the end of the day, those type of guys, like I said, they're dangerous because they're hungry. And I think you're going to get a Brian Harsin that comes into Auburn hungry for success. I think you're going to get a Brian Harsin that's not afraid of Nick Saban. He's not afraid to go into a living room that Nick Saban just got out of. I think he'd probably hold the door for him as he walked out. But I think you're gonna get a guy that's a fighter. That's what Brian Harsin is. He's a fighter, and he wants the biggest fight. He's been the guy that's been fighting on the undercard for so long, and he's been winning, and he's been winning, and he's been knocking people out. and he's sick of it. He wants to fight for the title. He wants a shot at the title. Brian Harsin's going to get his shot at the title. He just wants a chance to get in the ring, and I like guys like that.
Now, for a guy like Harsin, now Auburn is in a really, really unique place right now because the transfer portal is going to be, it's the first year that's going to be this way, right? Everybody gets the one-time transfer. Mm-hmm. He has to get some guys to stay, and he has to keep guys from leaving. Not just against the NFL. Usually it's the NFL, right? You got your good juniors and you say, okay, can we keep, or the red shirt sophomores, can we keep them for another year? We've got guys who may not agree with his culture, or they may not want to be pushed hard. How do you feel about, now, if you're Brian Harsin, what is your pitch to guys who are on the fence about either leaving Auburn, some guys who may have been super attached to Gus and don't want to be there any longer, or some guys planning on going to the NFL? What is your pitch to keep them in Auburn next year?
Well, you're going to have natural attrition. That's going to happen regardless. Some guys are so attached to the old guy, it doesn't matter if, Newt Rodney showed up. They're not going to stay. But my pitch, if I'm Brian Harsin, number one, I'm saying that if you're not willing to work, you're not willing to work hard, if you're not willing to pay the price because the price goes up every day, then it's not going to work out here. But number two is, I think Brian Harsin's smart enough to walk in there and say, guys, look around. We can win right now. Why can't we win next year? This isn't a total overhaul of a program that is an absolute disaster. Now, there's some holes up front on both sides of the ball. You need some more offensive linemen. You actually need some tackles. And on defensively, you need some pass rushers. But there'll be some guys out there because just so happens, if you were going to pick 1 year to take over a program, well, you basically pick the year where there's free agency everywhere. There's nothing stopping really anybody. And I look around and say, guys, I see what we have in this room. I see the potential. I know how good I am as a coach. I know how good you guys can be as a player. Let's go bring in some other guys too, and we can win next year. Why not turn this thing into a machine starting next year? There's no reason to say, oh, well, it's going to be a total rebuild next year. We're not going to have the time. You got the SEC Freshman of the Year. You got a quarterback that's played 2 full seasons, also won SEC Freshman of the Year. I think if you're a guy also that's on the fence offensively and saying, okay, well, would I improve my draft stock coming back and working in this offense, going through the practices, going through the installs? Yes. Look, I believe Boise State's put 2 less guys in the NFL as Gus Malzahn has in almost the same amount of time. So the offense is very intricate in all levels, from a run game to play action game to intermediate passing game, screen game, vertical passing game. You can work on everything. It's not going to be, hey, just run the 9 route, or hey, we're going to run one rip route. You're going to have an opportunity to run concepts out of multiple formations. You're going to get your bunches. You're going to get some, I call them alternate formations out of heavier personnels, whether it's jumbos, whether they break it out into quads and run some heavy screen set out to the field. You're going to have a lot of different options. And I think versatility, obviously, if it's used right, if you're able to still have an identity, obviously just adds more weapons in the arsenal. And what do scouts want to see? They want to see you do more than one thing.
I think that's super, super important because you got to look at some of the guys that we're seeing that, so look at 2 of the wide receivers out of Phoenix City, right? Central Phoenix that ended up at Clemson. Maybe those guys stay at home if they felt like they could have the opportunity to run a whole route tree, right?
George Pickens.
Right.
At the end of the day, because you have to look at it, and I always say this, because in recruiting, it's just like, I guess, wearing spandex. Some people think, it's a right, not a privilege, and that's just not true. Everybody thinks, in recruiting, that I'm going to go to the NFL, and everybody's parents thinks that their kid's going to go to the NFL, at least most of the time. So one of the biggest pitches is, all right, number one, how many guys have you put in the NFL? Right. Number two, why are they in the NFL? Is it because of development? Is it your strength and conditioning with the development? Is it something where there's just so many good players around you where they're able to come in and just find you? So there's multiple avenues to be able to pitch it. And when you're able to say, listen, our scheme, I can go, the beautiful thing about Brian Harsin's scheme when you're pitching this is I can go into a receiver's house and say, this is why it'll get you NFL ready. I can go into a running back's house and say, this is why it'll get you NFL ready. I can go into a quarterback and tight end's house. But most importantly, Duke's in a position people really don't think about a lot in recruiting is I can go into an offensive lineman's house and say, listen, you're not just gonna zone protect in pass protection. You're going to man protect. We are going to do some sliding. I'm going to pull you. You're going to get multiple things. So when these scouts turn on the tape and say, all right, I'm looking at a left guard for Auburn, here's the 8 things I need to see. Well, typically in the past, you had to be Braden Smith and be able to lift up a UPS truck and throw it over your shoulder to be able to go to the NFL. But now they'll be able to turn on and say, wow, I'm getting some variations in pulls. I'm seeing the perimeter run. I'm seeing the combo blocks. I'm seeing you come off the ball out of a 3-point stance, out of a 2-point stance, to be able to do multiple things. So I think it prepares every position, which obviously when you're at a place like Auburn that already lends itself to big-time recruits because you're in the SEC West and a place that's football crazy, you add that to the mix. Now you start talking about some Al Borges 2004 stuff, and people are going to start getting really familiar, and a little bit of nostalgia is going to be coming back.
Oh, wow. All right, so let's play a quick game, right? So,
oh, God, like the guy from Saw. I'm just glad I'm saying that to you and not waking up in some bathroom with the mirror broken listening to somebody say that to me.
Oh, man. Hey, so watch this. There are a few guys on the team that could be borderline, whether they transfer or go to the NFL. Mm-hmm. I want to see what you think they do. All right. Okay. So if you think they should stay, say stay. Or you think they're going to stay, say stay.
Okay, what they're going to do, not
what they're going to do.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Jamie and Sherwood, stay or go?
Stay.
Think he stays?
He's got to work on He's got to work on pass. He's really got to work on his coverage. He's got to work on his feet. He's great against the run, but if you're going to be look, if he goes as a nickel, I think he'd have a shot. As a safety, even if it's a boundary guy, I just don't think him and Smoke both, I don't think are good enough in coverage against receivers that are worth their salt in the slot. And there's a few times where you saw that because they're going to have to move them closer to the line of scrimmage if they're going to play in the NFL.
Right. I mean, Sherwood
they're good players. Don't get me wrong. They're
right.
Players.
No, definitely. I think Sherwood is a guy who has everything that the NFL wants. I think if he loses maybe 5 to 7 pounds, gets a little faster, runs well at the combine, he's a guy that he's the current NFL dime backer or nickel backer.
That's exactly right. That's what I'm saying. As nickel, if I'm Jamie and Sherwood, I'm going to the draft and saying, all right, I'm a nickel, then that's different.
Right.
Now, if I'm going in there saying I'm a safety, that's different. Because especially with what you said, it's basically a new position now. Right. And a lot of it is packaged.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? A lot of it is packaged. And they like to bring those guys off the edge too now. It's not just covering. They're starting to really, I think that's one of the cool things to watch in college and the NFL is kind of what they're doing with that package backer, that nickel, dime, whatever you want to call them.
Okay, let's go to the next one. Seth Williams.
With this offense, I think you got to stay.
Got to stay. Sell me. I'm Seth Williams. Sell me.
All right, Seth, number one, I've watched your film from a catch radius standpoint, from a going to get the ball. You do a lot of great things. I think you have really good range. I think you actually have AJ Green range when the ball's in the air. Now, speed-wise, I know he lost some bad weight last year, which did make him faster, but a few things he has to work on. He's got to start being able to get off press better against corners that hit him with that inside jam. He struggles to win that fight early at the line. That's something he needs to work on. I actually think he needs to put on about 5 to 10 pounds of muscle because a lot of times if you watch what Horn did to him at South Carolina, he just beat him up. He just beat him up when the ball was in there because he was bigger than him. And also in this offense, when you think about Seth Williams, all you do is think about the deep ball. In this offense, I can turn you into when you think about Seth Williams, you worry about the crosser, you worry about the screen, you worry about the out. It's being able to really expand the route tree, and you'll be going to the combine not saying you're a wide receiver in a Gus Malzahn offense. You'll be going in the combine saying you're a wide receiver in a more traditional NFL pro-style offense that Brian Harsin coaches.
I think I'll stay.
Yeah.
How about Anthony Schwartz?
Anthony, I just think Anthony would go to the combine and run, 2 in his 40-yard dash. I mean, he's one of the fastest people on the planet. It'd be hard for me if I was Anthony to come back just because they're going to draft you really high if you go run that anyway, regardless. You could have no arms if you went and ran that at the combine. Right. They'd still draft you as a receiver. Not saying that Schwartz can't catch or anything like that, but I think he's a guy that if I ran that fast, number one, I'd have insurance on my legs. I'd be protecting the city at night, and I'd probably go to the combine and see what I could do.
Yeah, I think if I was Schwartz, I would go because now I want him to stay. Absolutely, I would love to see him in his offense. But I don't see anything that you gain from staying like so. Guys, if you don't become a better pass catcher in a year, right? It's something that you do over time. Like it's almost like it's like accuracy with a quarterback. You can get a little bit better, but it's not a whole lot. I think he's not going to get any slower, right? That's the only thing that he stands to do is to get slower because right now he's fast as hell. He runs enough of his routes, and for him to risk injury by coming back, of course he has to be insured, but he's a guy I think that he does stand the game. I mean, I could see him easily being a 34th round pick based on his speed alone. So having that and even higher, now I don't know what he does on a bench press or whatever, but if he goes out and shows out in the combine, he's a guy that I see can make some money next year.
Yeah, well, I wonder if he goes and runs that fast in the combine, if Samuel L. Jackson isn't going to give him a visit and try and get him to sign up for the Avengers. They already got Thor on the basketball team.
Right.
Samuel L. Jackson's just not hanging around Toomer's corner, just trying to find somebody to fight the next alien attack we get.
Man, seriously, man. Seeing him run away, and it's one of those things where it almost reminds me of like Julio Jones in Atlanta, right? Mm-hmm. I never saw Julio Jones get to run under a ball. He always is like, hey, I'm going to come back, I'm going to jump, I'm going to kick, I'm going to wait on it. I never got to see him. Like I just couldn't imagine Julio being like in a Mahomes type offense. Being able to see Anthony Schwartz just kind of being lined up in an NFL offense in that kind of Oz Hakeem role on The Greatest Show on Turf where he could just blow by safeties and with a quarterback that can hang it out there too. I'm not to say Bo can't, but as far as an offense that NFL type where you have the multiplicity and different roles throughout the offense would allow him his speed to be accentuated. I think I would love to see it just as an Auburn guy, man. So, but Flash, if you're listening, come back.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be huge for Auburn. I mean, I just again, this guy's so fast. And I know how they are at the combine. It gets really weird. Those guys drink 9 cups of coffee and are just walking around, just waiting. So
now I've got a couple of buddies that work in scouting in the NFL, and they asked me about 2 guys, and they surprised me. Both guys really surprised me. One was Roger McCreary, and one was Kobe McClain.
Yeah.
Both of these guys have decisions to make. Now, I'm not just off of the eye test. I know it's a lot of things that, the casual fan will say, oh, well, Kobe was getting, manhandled, and Roger McCreary didn't do A, B, C, D. But I'm literally talking to an NFL scout who's telling me like, hey, man, hey, y'all got some ball players. Those 2 are definitely ball players. If you're either one of these guys, what's the case for staying and what's the case for going?
Number one for Jacoby, I think you come back because you got to gain weight. You got to put weight on. I think he could be a high pick if he puts weight on. Obviously, he's super physical. This year, playing in the box, literally at Mike, is going to do wonders for him. I mean, even if you slide him, back to Will or even slide him a little bit further than that experience, you can always take that with you. But I think he does need to gain weight. Roger McCreary had a phenomenal year, regardless of what anybody says. The reason the scouts are saying that is because they turn the film on and they watch him. They watch him in man coverage. They watch him in zone. They watch his ability to flip his hips. They watch his ability to, make up speed. They watch his tackling ability, which is something I think surprised me a little bit in how well Roger tackled, especially in some of the plays where, the defensive line's getting blown off the ball and a corner's having to come in there and make the play. You see McCreary coming off the edge and the boundary on the corner blitz having success, and you see him, returning picks for touchdowns and doing stuff like that. Roger had an incredible year. I wouldn't be surprised if he actually gets a really high grade, and if he gets a high enough grade, he needs to go. And it just give Auburn another corner that they've put in the league to add. Jamel Dean, Carlton Davis, Noah Igbenogany. You just look around. They're everywhere out there, and just be another one. I think if Rogers' tape's good enough, he needs to go because there's another kid Auburn has at corner that's going to be better than any of them, and his name's Jalen Simpson.
Yeah, man, Simpson is I'm not really worried about the cornerback position at Auburn going forward. Now, to get those 2 guys back next year, we're talking lockdown, right? Mm-hmm. Especially if you can you add a Lee Hunter into the mix, you add the kid Marquise, and you add some guys another year experience on the defensive line where you can make it a little bit tougher on the opposing offense. So you can't just sit back and they don't have all day, because I don't care if it's Deion. You
can't cover people all day. I don't care. Yeah, Deion Sanders can't cover people all day.
No, you're right.
It just ain't gonna work.
Right. Not at all. And so as we start to wind down here, and it's different being me and you talking is different with me kind of facilitate. It's really weird.
Oh, I love it, man. It's crazy. I feel like Justin Powell, when Sharif Cooper's going to be eligible, I can finally play the 2.
Ooh, okay. Hey, listen, man. So let me ask you this. We usually don't do basketball, but I got to ask you this. How good is Justin Powell, bro? Good gracious.
Dude, he's a witch of the highest order. That's what, that's what I see. I use that term all the time, and it's actually kind of caught on, and people are like, oh, he's a witch. He's a witch. Justin Powell's legit witch. It just reminds me, it's like, I can just see, for anybody out there that's ever seen the Hoosiers movie, I can just see the scene where like Justin Powell's in, whatever small town Kentucky out there just shooting on his basket in his front yard. Nobody really knows about him. He's a 3-star. And then all of a sudden Bruce Pearl just pulls in, had heard about him from around the town. He's the Jimmy Chitwood of Auburn. That's what he is. He's Auburn's Jimmy Chitwood. And the thing I think that surprises everybody about Justin Powell, number one, he's 6'6". That's something people got to realize. I love Scott Pullman. He was one of my favorite Auburn basketball players, but Scott Pullman wasn't a big guy, and he was really a shooter. This kid is running the point. He's rebounding. He can pass the ball like he's a junior or a senior. His instincts and awareness is off the charts, and it's getting to the point now where he's starting to move up draft boards, and I think he's also the type he's going to want to play in that tournament. But if you just think, because I think Shreve Cooper is going to be eligible soon. I think he's going to be. He keeps getting closer and closer to the court. I see him at the beginning. He wasn't anywhere on there. You never saw him. Then all of a sudden you see him sitting in the stands in street clothes. Right. Then all of a sudden you see him in street clothes warming up with the team on the court. Now he's warming up with the team in team gear and has a waiver to practice. So I don't think you give somebody a waiver to practice if you're about to make him ineligible unless you're just sick in the head, which, knowing the NCAA, there's no telling what's going on over there. And Auburn has a chance, I think, next year win the whole thing. You think about Sharif Cooper at point, Justin Powell at 2, Jabari Smith probably at center, JT Thor at power 4. It looks like Jurassic Park out there, man. Yeah,
man, you're scary, right? Scary hours, demon time. Yeah, man.
Yeah, I'm just waiting to see JT Thor chasing a Jeep down the street. That's how big he is. Hey, man. Down like a dirt road, and they're trying to get away from him.
Man, it's hard, man. I'm excited about where Auburn basketball is going. We know what baseball has been doing, and now definitely football has something to be proud of. Man, so just to put a wrap on the craziest coaching search ever, man, what was probably the moment where that made you slap your head the hardest? Like, man, what are we doing? Like, what was the moment in this whole – now that it's over, we can look back and laugh at it, right?
Yeah.
What was the one moment that put you at your worst going through
the one moment that put me at the worst is not going all in on Mario Cristobal early. I think if Alan Green and again, I'm like I said, I love the Brian Harsin hire, but I think if Alan Green would have been running the show from the beginning, they would have thrown the bag at Mario. Now, people say, okay, Brian Harsin beat Mario in a bowl game 2017. Look, I understand that. I love the Brian Harsin hire. I think it was a sneaky good hire, but when they didn't go full bore after Mario and then didn't go after him again the second time, that's when I was like, man, because look, I like Bill Clark. I was at South Alabama when he was there. I just, thought there were higher guys on the list. And, everybody's saying Kevin Steele. I just never believed that. But I think probably the Mario Cristobal moment.
Okay. Yeah, I think my moment was hearing that Venables actually had serious interest in the job, and he kind of backed out after, maybe sleeping on it. And then they came. I took a nap. After I heard that, I took a nap, and I wake up and we got a coach. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Well, see, it's so crazy because, it happens so quick,
Right.
You hear Brian Harsin's name because nobody was saying that. Nobody said Brian Harsin really until Pete Thamel, which talk about just a stroke of irony that Pete Thamel's the one that breaks the story on who the next Auburn coach is going to be. He's literally like Napoleon, man. He's been exiled from Auburn. So, I just thought that was funny. But man, it's just crazy how fast it went. But I think they got it right. And at the end, as long as you get the hire right, and I think there were some decisions they made behind the scenes to let Alan Green do it. And he did his thing, man.
Let me ask you this, and I promise I'm gonna let you go. Who do you think are have-to-haves on the staff to retain? Like, so we say he's got autonomy, right? That's what the word is. I've heard both. I've heard maybe
to retain.
Right. Who would you retain on this staff?
Mm-hmm. If it was me, I retained T. Will and Caddy. Those are the two
guys.
I retain T. Will just because, the linebackers, when they've had an opportunity with the defensive line that's been able to do their job, have played pretty well. I thought he taught Jacoby up really well. I mean, those guys playing out of position. You had young guys behind him, not a lot of depth. Obviously, Chandler Wooten opted out and had situation off the field. So I think from a recruiting standpoint, too, with T. Will, with some guys you're already out there on, I think he could be nothing but just a huge addition to some more home runs you can bring in. And then Cadillac, just from a recruiting perspective, I think he's comfortable with Tank. And like I said, from Brian Harsin, the minute the words "I accept a job at Auburn" came out of my lips, my next words are, "What's Tank Bigsby's phone number, and is he okay?" So, I think that's something that can help that transition. Obviously, with Emmanuel Henderson, too, a big-time back, probably the number one player in the state next year, has a great relationship with Cadillac, even though Alabama kind of leads there. But if you're Auburn, the Harsin hire is great, but you've got to surround him with dudes. You've got to surround him with dudes that have recruited the Southeast. Bring Del McGee home. Go get Matt Luke. You got to put together a superstar staff around him that can recruit because, again, the dude's got the blueprint. He's got the mojo and the juice to do it. You just got to give him the keys to the ignition. Right. It's like that R. Kelly song. You know what I'm saying? Pop hot and fresh out the kitchen. All right.
Yeah, and I think those two guys are kind of and I think it's really, really kind of ironic that you say that because those guys, when it comes to their old Auburn as far as 04, but they're kind of represent the new Auburn, where it's kind of like it's going to be like, hey, we don't mind having a cool conversation, or we don't mind, talking clothes or whatever, but at the same time, we're here for a job and we're here to play ball, right?
Yeah. Well, my thing is you're gonna have a bunch of guys in there. It's like, listen, I'm gonna go ahead and tell y'all. Look around. There's other dudes working just as hard and harder than we are right now. Like, I don't got time to care about your favorite rapper or whatever right now while we're on the field. Like, while we're on the field, this is business time because we're trying to go out here and dominate. And once we get off the field, that's fine. We'll talk about it for a little bit. Then I need you watching film. It's like Brian Harsin said, I need guys that show up on Tuesday ready to work. I need guys that show up on Wednesday ready to work, that don't think they're just going to show up Saturday and have it happen. Or, hey, it's cool that I play for Auburn. Or, it's cool that I coach for Auburn. I can tell my buddies how to coach. No, I'm here to win because I want to see if I can be the best. And that's what winners do. They surround themselves with winners. And I think that's what Brian Harsin's going to do. And I think that's what Auburn needs. It's like I always said, it's always fun to be little brother and make fun of him until one day he grows up and whoops your ass. Man, and it's about time that he grew up.
I'm telling you. And do you think there's any way that Auburn, with all the bad optics, is there any way that Kevin Steele can be retained?
In my opinion, no. Because I believe I had a former Auburn player come on my show and tell me the same thing. And then again, you're gonna have people in brass come out and say, "Oh, this didn't happen." They're not gonna tell on themselves, man. I mean,
right.
The king doesn't tell on himself. The king doesn't say, "No, it's my fault." Or
right.
They're not gonna tell on the money people because they still need them. It's like I said in the show. It's not that you don't need money people or that money people can't be influential. It's just if you're gonna keep screwing it up, then there's no point in even giving us money because it's not gonna work. Right. So at the end of the day, I really do think. I feel good about it, man. I really feel like Brian Harsin is a guy that wants to fight, and to win the fight, you got to want the fight. And Auburn's got to stop hoping to be good because you can hope in one hand and do something in the other. You put in the work to be good, and you will be good. And all the people that say he can't recruit, all right, he's had the best classes Boise State's ever signed, and he's won all those games with those recruiting classes that you look and say, oh, they're not even close to what you get in the SEC. Imagine the caliber of player and the product he can put on the field, when he has the caliber of player that you have at an Auburn in an SEC West school. So I think the jury's still out on that, but it's always fun. It's like giving a NASCAR driver a Maserati for the first time. You just want to go 150 miles an hour and boat race everybody to 7-Eleven, baby.
Hey, man, Jboy, man, amazing stuff, bro, man. Hey, tell everybody where they can find your show, bro.
Yeah, man. I know we got a lot of the same listeners too, so they're used to mine. But you can find that anywhere you get your podcast: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, on Twitter, Instagram at the Jboy Show. Dukes, man, love coming on. I think the background's kind of gotten darker as I've been on here. That wasn't planned, even though I feel like during the Dark Auburn thing that would have been kind of sick.
Oh, man, that would have been
I know, right? I know. I was literally thinking about that halfway through the interview. But man, awesome to come on. I can't wait to get you on to talk in our normal slot now that all the craziness is done. But you're doing a great job, man. And now that you can kind of focus, I know this even more. I know it's going to take off, bro, because you're one of the best at what you do, and I appreciate it.
Hey, man, I appreciate it, man. Jboy, hey, I'll probably see you this weekend, man. We'll go to the Jboy show. We'll do it that way, and then we'll figure out how we're going to put this together on a more consistent basis.
Definitely, man. Well, I'm excited, bro, and stay safe out there, man.
All right, you too, brother.
All right, brother.
All
See
right.
you.